Well, good afternoon, everyone. Michael Kitces here, talking office hours today. And I thought for our topic today, we would dive into this discussion of finding a niche, choosing a niche. How do you pick a niche to go with? So as are many of these office hours, I try to do these responses to questions that come in. And so I thought I'd feel one today that actually has been a very common one that I'm getting a lot these days. So this comes from Jesse, and Jesse said, I saw you recently speak on your future of financial planning and industry trends about how important it'll be to find a niche for your career in the future. I've been in the industry 5 years and was thinking about pursuing the CDFA designation, so Certified Divorce Financial Analyst designation, and making divorce planning my niche. So hoping to get your thoughts on this niche. Just says I'm concerned about how many people are already in the niche. Is it saturated? Do attorneys really do all this work in-house, so they don't really even need a financial planner? And do I even have to worry that the institution of marriage is changing to the point that divorce may not be as commonplace in the future as it is today? Certainly the future trends of your niche kind of matters. So it's just, one thing I like about divorce planning as a niche is that it has this credible designation attached to it. So that helps me stand out as an expert when I present myself, but it means there are more people already in this niche. So what are your thoughts? So that was Jesse's question. So, a few thoughts in going down this road on pursuing a niche. So first and foremost, I really view this as something that I think is going to be essential for the future of financial advisors. And a lot of you have heard me beat this drum already. We talk about it on XYPN Radio, our podcast for XY Planning Network, and I talk about it at a lot of conferences as well. And I'm afraid you're not going to hear me stop beating the drum on this. It's that important. And I think we're starting to collectively recognize this as an industry. You all tell me, how many of you feel like growth is a little bit harder now than it used to be a couple of years ago? To tap the screen, give me a couple of Periscope hearts here if you agree, or you can type your comments in. Are you finding more and more often now when you go out there and you talk about what you do as a financial advisor, these prospective clients you might be working with are comparing you to other financial advisors? Well, this other person up the street does this. I saw online you can do that. I'm finding all these other financial planner sources. Why should I work with you and not all the other financial planners that are out there? We see that question coming up more and more, even for our advisory firm practice. When I look back 10 or 15 years ago as a wealth management firm, our typical approach process with the prospect would be, us, some, local broker from a wirehouse, and no offense to wirehouses, but he was there to sell the wirehouse products. There wasn't a lot of financial planning going on at the time. And then maybe an insurance agent who was actually their brother-in-law. And so it would be us, an old-fashioned stockbroker, and an insurance agent selling product to his family members. And basically, as long as, we would win every prospect as long as it wasn't going to be awkward at, Thanksgiving or Christmas to not have bought the insurance policy from your brother-in-law. That was kind of the dynamic. Now, when we typically approach folks today, it's us and several other high-quality financial planning wealth management firms in the area. We're in a pretty dense area here in D.C., so there are a lot of them. And I routinely find when we go out and compete for business now, we're competing against other good financial planners. Usually these are people I know through NAPFA or FPA, and I don't have anything negative to say about them. I'd say, hey, well, we're a little different in this regard, and they do things a little bit different over there, but we're highlighting nuances. And that's this phenomenon. I've dubbed it the crisis of differentiation, which is when we go back 10 or 15 years ago, the truth is being a true financial planner actually was a niche. There were 300,000 people who called themselves financial planners, but fewer than 1 in 10 that had CFP certification or were really doing financial planning. And the truth was just being a financial planner or wealth manager was a niche. That's really not true anymore. It's not a niche anymore. It's kind of mainstream, and it's driving us all to go to the next level of saying, all right, I got to drill down deeper to another niche, to find some way to differentiate beyond just saying I do comprehensive financial planning with credentials and experience and customized individualized solutions for my clients. that statement that I'm going to bet almost all of you say, right? You deliver a personalized, customized financial planning advice to the needs of your clients based on your experience, your credentials, and your expertise. And the problem is all of you on this Periscope say the same thing. We historically have as well as a firm. Not differentiated anymore because we're all saying the same thing. So the dynamic is going forth into like real niches, deeper niches. And so getting to Jesse's kind of original question, is CDFA a good program? So I think it is. For those of you who aren't familiar, it's the Certified Divorce Financial Analyst Program. It's from a group called the Institute of Divorce Financial Analysts. They kind of run and oversee that designation. Certainly what I would view as a credible, legitimate designation in the space. So in a world where there's a lot of kind of questionable designations out there, I think CDFA is legit. I've included it on my list of what I call post-CFP designations that people should check out and consider if they're trying to extend their education further and move towards a niche. And there's no question being able to go out and get something like CDFA is a nice expedited process to gaining expertise in a particular niche and having a program that just serves it up for you with all the educational curriculum and a nice designation at the end so you don't have to figure it out yourself. Now, is this a good niche? I have to admit, I think it is. You look at the statistics on divorce, there's a lot of divorce going on out there, and I'm just not sure how dense the CDFA world really is. I mean, there are many of them. It is a growing organization. I don't mean to say they're not succeeding, but I even scanned around because they've got to find a CDFA option on their website. I searched around the DC area. The DC metro area has 8 million people, and I found about 24 CDFAs. And I'm going to bet 24 people are not fully saturating the divorce rate for 8 million people in the DC area. And we're a dense area with a lot of CDFAs. So realistically, I think there's a lot of space, and it's worth understanding. And Jesse, you may find this as you delve further into the CDFA program. This really isn't competition for attorneys. Now, I don't live the full-time divorce world, so I'm sure there are divorce experts out there who can speak to this even more depth. But the dynamics for a lot of divorce, particularly collaborative divorce and the whole growth of the collaborative divorce space is one spouse has an attorney, the other spouse has an attorney. They're kind of the attorneys that will either duke it out or hopefully come to agreements, but they need a neutral third party that can assess both sides and give objective views on the actual financial matters without having each attorney lobby for their respective side. That's the role that CDFAs often play. So it's truly complementary to attorneys. It's not, hey, are you going to get knocked out of this because attorneys are out there? It's actually, hey, if you can build great relationships with the divorce attorneys, that will be the constant stream of referrals for you to have a never-ending series of business without needing to rely on all the other marketing channels that everybody else on this Periscope relies upon, because we're all generalists and now you're a specialist getting referrals from a different place. So I really do think it's a huge opportunity. Now, when I look out in the long run, if I project this out 10 or 15 years, I actually do think we're going to get to a point where it's harder to have a unique, differentiated niche. So I think the trend you're actually going to see as niche becomes more popular, and one recent industry survey found that more than 50% of advisory firms now are at least exploring or looking into niches. You know, the crisis of differentiation is on. It's the natural path. It's where all of us are going to go. Same thing as every other profession, right? Attorneys have specialties, accountants have specialties, doctors have specialties, and now financial planners are going to have specialties. So if I project that forward, I think what you're actually going to see 10 or 15 years from now is mega firms in particular niches. So we look at the landscape today, there are a lot of huge AUM firms and wealth management firms that built their base because 15 years ago, they were early, they were the niche, while everybody else was still selling product and maybe occasionally doing planning. And the firms that went into depth there built huge businesses by owning that niche. So now that that niche is getting saturated, we have to go down the next level. I think what you're going to see in the coming decade is an explosion of firms going into niches, some of which will succeed in the same way that today your challenge might be, geez, I'm trying to grow a firm in my area, but there's 1 or 2 or 3 big firms in town that are already known across everyone, and it's really hard to get your foot in the door as a new firm. 10 years from now, you might see the same thing in niches. Like, geez, I want to go in and do CDFA, but there are 3 firms out there that already have $10 billion under management and 150 advisors each that just own the divorce space, and it's so hard for me to get my foot in the door. I think that's the kind of transition you're going to see. So the good news is, if you're looking at a potential niche today, this is your, like, you were there early. 15 years from now, when you look back and say, like, I wish I had the one big business idea to have been successful in my career. If you're in your 20s, 30s, or even 40s, and you've got that time horizon, like, this is your opportunity. Just as in the late 90s and early 2000s, the AUM firms had a 15-year run because that was the niche before it went mainstream. Now that's mainstream. And new niches are going to be the new big business idea for growing large firms in the coming decade. That's the trend. I'm seeing it already taking shape, and it's going to take off from here. Now, what that ultimately means is, for first stage niches, where I think we are right now, going out into established programs, following their curriculum so you can get up to speed on the niche quickly and then dive in, is a great way to go about doing it. So you can dive into the retirement niche with American College's RICP program or RIA's RMA designation. You can go down this road with divorce, getting the CDFA from the Institute of Divorce Financial Analysts. I'm seeing a question about the philanthropy niche. Sure, I think that's a great space, right? Like, if you really have experience working with very high net worth folks, people that have tens of millions of dollars, there is a lot of anxiety in trying to figure out, hey, if I'm going to give away $1 million, how do I really make sure that charity I'm going to give the money to uses the money responsibly to ensure that it achieves the kinds of outcomes and vision I have for the world, right? We're seeing all sorts of changes in philanthropy right now. The big news was Zuckerberg's launch of his new philanthropic vehicle, where he basically said, I'm actually not entirely giving the money away. I'm using my own vehicle where it's going to be kind of like a business where ultimately the money goes out for my family's net worth, but he wants to build it as a business. And one of the big reasons he's doing that is because he wants more control over how his philanthropic endeavors get implemented. So absolutely, I think philanthropy is a good opportunity. American College has a nice designation on this called the CAP, C-A-P. I think it's Chartered Advisor in Philanthropy. So there are a lot of structured programs for this, which I think are great starts. If I was looking at a niche right now, I think that's a very reasonable path to go. Now, the caveat, eventually, I think even that's going to be a hard path to go. At some point down the road, when I look up CDFAs, there are going to be 150 in the DC area within 10 miles of where I am, and this is going to start feeling saturated. I think that's years out. I think if you're doing it now, you're on the early stage, you're okay, but a couple years down the road, that's going to get harder. And the transition you're going to see, sort of the second stage of niches that's coming, is people saying, forget this going out to get an established program because that's too crowded because everybody else is taking the same established program. I'm going to make my own niche. I'm going to make my own focused area. I'm going to specialize in one group of clientele, because the truth is, for most of us, we can have incredibly focused niches and be wonderfully successful. The truth for most of us, we can have a great practice that fulfills all of our financial needs and often even grows a thriving business off of maybe 75 to 125 high quality clients that are right there in the center of our niche, 75 to 125 A-level clients. And the truth is, I actually know many firms that build great businesses with nothing more than 2 or 3 dozen of their top A-level clients. So with that kind of specificity, I mean, you can go incredibly deep and focused in finding a niche. If you just want to specialize in real estate developers in your town, in your big city area, where a lot of big money moves around, they have unique needs. It's different than traditional financial services because they keep investing in real estate, not in portfolios. So AUM advisors don't touch them. But, if there's 2 or 3 dozen of those in your greater metropolitan area, and you can just specialize in those folks, you can build your whole business off of just that select few that no other advisor wants to serve. And of course, how are you going to learn that niche? You're going to have to get out there and actually talk to the people and see what they need. So I actually have a couple articles up on the site. We'll make sure we have links in the notes about it, of how to really find and craft an expertise in your own niche that you're building from scratch. And it starts with just finding about a dozen of these people, take them out to lunch, and ask them a whole bunch of questions. What are their challenges? What are their financial issues? What do they actually need to be successful? What do they feel is missing that they wish someone knew more about that could come to the table for them. And what you're going to find for a lot of those folks is the questions they ask and the issues they have is not our traditional slew of portfolio management and insurance products and annuities and all the rest of that. And that's actually the point. That's how you formulate a specialized niche, right? If I talk to what does a real estate developer need for financial advice, I'm going to guarantee you it's very, very different than what a baby boomer retiree needs, which is what most of us in the industry are focusing on these days. And that differentiation is good. That means you can craft a service specific to those folks. And where are you going to get the expertise? You're going to do the legwork to learn it, right? What would that client do? Because they need the answer to their financial question. They're going to go online, they're going to read, they're going to research, they're going to go to classes, they're going to learn it and figure it out. So what's your opportunity in a niche for that person? Do the same thing for them, have the answers to their questions. The truth is you don't necessarily have to know everything that there is to be known. You need to know more than the people that you're serving so that you can create value by having them pay you so that they don't have to do it themselves. And of course, the more people you serve in that space, the deeper your expertise is going to become and the more effective that you can serve them. So just recognize this dynamic. You can craft your own niche. You don't have to go even with programs that are out there. But I think for what's out there today, there are some good programs and it's a great place to start because I don't think virtually any niche is oversaturated today. Almost all of us are still generalists. Maybe we're talking about moving towards niches, but we're really not there yet. So I hope this is helpful. Thanks again, everyone, for joining in on Office Hours. Hope that we will see you next week as well, 1 p.m. East Coast time on Tuesdays. Have a great week. Take care.